Hello, and thank you for joining this presentation with the title Environmental Sustainability and Culture, Mainstreaming International Policy Frameworks into the Cultural and Creative Industries. My name is Iphigenia Taxopoulou, and I am the General Secretary of the European Theatre Network Mythos 21 and an Associate Partner of Julie's Bicycle. I have been working in the field of culture and sustainability for more than 10 years, with a focus on sustainable culture management as a lecturer and consultant. Currently, I'm writing a book titled The Practitioner's Handbook of Sustainable Theatre, which will be published by Bloomsbury, Matthew and Drama in 2022. So a few words about Julie's Bicycle, who we are. Julie's Bicycle is a London-based charity that works internationally to support the creative community to act on climate change and environmental sustainability. What we do, we act as a bridge between the arts and creative industries and environmental sustainability. We promote and support creativity, which we believe to be a powerful agent of change. We provide guidance and sector-specific tools to help practitioners embed sustainable practices in their businesses and operations. We help the sector develop new skills through training and a wealth of specialized resources, while at the same time we have been advocating for a step change in cultural policy that aligns to international climate policies in order to be able to harness the opportunities of the green recovery. Now, if the culture and creative industries are to be part of the green recovery and eventually of a more sustainable future, it is important that the international policy frameworks are mainstreamed into the sector through relevant cultural policies. At present, the global framework calls for urgent action to reduce carbon emissions, a net zero target until 2050, and supports the pathway towards sustainable development. The road to achieving this significant degree of consensus over climate change has been difficult and long, perhaps too long. There are, however, three landmark moments which best describe where we stand today. In 1987, the United Nations Brundtland Commission published their historic report, Our Common Future. This was the first time that the future of humankind was directly associated to the future of the planet, explicitly expressed in a political document. In addition to that, it is this report which actually established the term sustainable development, but also its definition for the decades to come. So sustainable development is the kind of development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. Following that report, many more international initiatives took place, but the most recent and important reference points are the Paris Agreement in 2015 and the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals in 2016. The Paris Agreement was the outcome of the 21st International Climate Summit of the United Nations in Paris, otherwise known as COP21. A record number of 195 countries signed the treaty, agreeing to keep global warming below 2 degrees Celsius, if possible below 1.5, to reduce emissions from human activities, to give priority to the issue of climate justice, to secure financing for developing countries in transition, and to review progress every 5 years. Now, COP26, which will take place in Glasgow later this year, will be actually the one reviewing progress so far. So this is why it is extremely crucial for the future. Parallel to the Paris Agreement, the United Nations also drafted and adopted the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, which together with the Paris Agreement constitute today the global, let's say, roadmap for the future. And here you may see in this graph how this roadmap is visualized in a concise manner. So from the 2015 agreement through the completion of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals to the net zero target of 2050. Now, how has this global framework been mainstreamed across the world? A good example is the recent adoption of the European Green Deal, which sets an overarching aim of making Europe climate neutral by 2050. The emphasis is on sustainable economic growth and on fair transition, so that no person and no place is left behind. But how do the creative and cultural sectors actually relate to sustainability? Well, first of all, the climate crisis is a cultural issue. It is largely conditioned by our current mindset and way of living. To change that, we need new narratives. We need creative ways to achieve a mind shift, and we need new cultural paradigms. As a meeting place for communities, culture is a message multiplier. It is a place where we share knowledge and values. And moreover, the transition towards a systemic change requires political will, but also imagination, creativity, and innovation. Last but not least, the cultural and creative sectors, like any other human activity, have their own environmental impact. These, like every other sector, they must acknowledge, measure, and work to reduce. However, so far, environmental policies have largely overlooked culture. In terms of systemic approach, the sector is seriously lagging behind. Yet, on the other hand, from the part of creatives, practitioners, and individual organizations, a wealth of responses exists already in what has become a flourishing, emerging field. At Julie's Bicycle, we have identified 7 creative climate trends. This means key communities of practice that are already leveraging significant new cultural value connected to sustainable work, new jobs, green finance, energy, audience engagement, design, and collaborations. These communities are creating a new cultural ecology fit for our changing world. How do they do that? For example, through artworks, prominent artists who are advocating for the environment through their work, writers like Ian McEwan and Margaret Atwood, artists like Olafur Eliasson or Anthony Gormley. Through activism, we know the celebrities who engage with the climate crisis taking on the role of international ambassadors, activists. Then we have prestigious and pioneering organizations such as the National Theatre in London or the Digital Festival in the Netherlands who have become champions of sustainability. We see creatives who tackle the climate crisis through the advancement of green technology, science, design, and innovation, like, for example, the Future Materials Bank, a research project developing sustainable materials for artists and creatives. Then there are networks for collaboration and collective action, like, for example, the Manchester Arts Sustainability Team, a wide network of Manchester's arts and culture institutions who work together and in collaboration with the local authorities to align with the city's net zero targets. Another trend is the pathfinding organizations. These are organizations that act like bridges, for example, like our own Julie's Bicycle, who are guiding and helping the arts and culture to act on sustainability. Another example is the Broadway Green Alliance, an organization working with theaters and professionals in New York and beyond. And finally, we have already seen a few examples of an emerging new model of cultural policy making with environmental sustainability at heart, like, for example, the Arts Council England or the Global Network's C40 Cities and the World Cities Culture Forum, who have developed specific strands of action at the intersection of arts and climate. Perhaps the most concrete policy response, at least on a supranational level, came only recently from the European Parliament. In its September 2020 resolution, the European Parliament calls for greening of the EU cultural programs in the framework of the Green Deal. As a first step, this concerns Erasmus+, Creative Europe, and European Solidarity Corps, programs which the European Parliament resolution states can help achieve the goals of the Green Deal. Now, currently, and following this resolution, specific measures are being designed by the Commission that will actively promote good environmental practice in the cultural and creative sectors, such as green procurement, sustainable mobility, embedding the principles of the circular economy and working towards behavioral change. And overall, this, as you see, is a strategic approach that will consist of two main pillars. On the one hand, dedicated funding, and on the other hand, sectorial guidance. But while this is in the making, on a national level, there is already an example to follow. In 2012, Arts Council England launched its environmental program, becoming the first cultural body in the world to embed environmental reporting into its funding agreements. This pioneering policy was designed and delivered in partnership with Julie's Bicycle, with the aim to develop the cultural sector's understanding, agency, and leadership on climate and the environment. The national portfolio organizations, that is the entire subsidized sector, commit to present their environmental reporting, policies, and action plans annually as a funding requirement. At the same time, they are supported by a rich program of training, events, resources, and thought leadership programs. And here you may see that while the policy applies to the entire cultural sector, the requirements and the range of environmental reporting varies per cultural activity. Now, the annual report by the Arts Council collects valuable data, records progress, and also celebrates the achievements of the sector in driving positive change. And that happens across their governance, operations, and creative practice. After almost 10 years of running this program, the results are very encouraging. Organizations are consistently reducing carbon emissions, which have decreased at around 35% across the national portfolio since the program began. Direct energy consumption has reduced by almost around 23% since 2012. And reduced energy consumption has led to financial savings of around £16.5 million since 2012. And equally important is a strand of the program that's called Beyond Carbon, reporting actually a wide range of positive findings that go beyond the carbon footprinting. For instance, it has become obvious that organizations are contributing to what we call a new creative ecology. There is growing demand for new skills and knowledge, clean technologies, renewable energy suppliers, sustainable goods and services, or greener waste management solutions. The annual reports also include interesting findings from surveys within the sector. Respondents report various additional benefits of their environmental program, which include, for instance, improvements in other priorities, such as building team morale and improving strategic decision-making, or better reputations in their communities, and enhanced opportunities for partnerships, to mention but a few. It was important for the success of this policy to offer not just a set of guidelines and requirements, but also the necessary support. In order to help the Arts Council implement its environmental policy, Julie's Bicycle developed an approach for organizational change based on these basic principles that help organizations embed environmental sustainability: commit, measure, understand, improve, and communicate. Commit is mainly expressed through the adoption of a policy and action plan, as well as engaging an organization's team towards a set of sustainability targets. Understanding depends on measuring impacts, learning from the findings, and setting priorities. Improvement translates this commitment and understanding into action towards the reduction of impacts. And finally, communicate is about sharing knowledge and best practice with the sector and the community. If one wants to take a closer glimpse at how an environmental culture policy can be effectively mainstreamed further in the actual field itself, here is a successful example. The National Theatre in London have placed sustainability among the organization's priorities as an integral part of its overall mission. The policy is implemented across the operations and activities of the National Theatre, starting, of course, with measures to reduce energy consumption, also for heating and cooling, which has led, in some cases, to almost 50% reduction on electricity costs, for example, and an equally impressive reduction in carbon emissions, which has reached around 25% over the years. The policy has also targeted the waste management system, resulting to a recycling rate of almost 70%, and a robust plan to gradually abandon the use of plastic. The National Theatre has also included green and ethical procurement initiatives in connection to food and drinks in the many restaurants and the bars of the theatre. But it has also implemented measures to improve water management and also to introduce green principles in the production processes of the theatre, in the theatre's workshops. The theatre has also dedicated a number of initiatives to enhance biodiversity, such as the installation of a roof garden, which helped the theatre create and keep beehives, eventually producing its own honey that is being sold in the National Theatre's bookshop. And finally, as part of their outreach and communication plan, the theatre supports green touring practices. It collaborates closely with the local culture and creative industry around sustainability, and also informs its artistic programming on themes around the climate emergency. After years of working with the cultural and creative sectors, but also with policymakers, here is, in short, what we have found to be the main benefits of adopting an environmental policy. Getting ahead of regulation. Even if cultural policy has been slow to catch up with a global framework, it will sooner or later. So acting now means that practitioners and organizations can be better prepared for the future changes. Reducing emissions means reducing costs. It will mean aligning with the net zero target, but also it would mean potential financial savings. In other words, this is an up-to-date version of what we call good management in times of climate crisis. better reputations, and a stronger sense of social and artistic commitment. It has been adequately documented that social and environmental responsibility strengthens the reputation and multiplies the leverage of the cultural and creative sectors in society. As I hope has been demonstrated, policy can facilitate, support, and accelerate transition for the sector, but it will also allow culture to play a more active and visible role on the way to a more sustainable future for our societies. We are at the moment when a range of measures are being unfolded to support our post-pandemic societies towards the green recovery. It is crucial for cultural practitioners and creatives to advocate for concrete and robust environmental policies specifically targeted for the cultural and creative industries. This will allow our sector to make a fresh start, embedding sustainability as a crucial component of its social and artistic mission. This is not to be seen as simply a survival strategy, but as a statement of confidence and ambition to be active and meaningful participants in the global responses to the climate emergency. Thank you very much for your attention, and please feel free to revisit the presentation should you wish to dwell further on the details. And I shall look forward to discussing with you during the online meeting, which is scheduled for later this month.